voaspecialenglish.com.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. One World Education is a group with a program in which teachers develop teaching materials based on student writing. The students are in middle and high school and write essays about cultural and global issues. Students are invited to write about an issue they find important. Then, professionally developed learning materials based on chosen essays are used in schools to teach other students. Eric Goldstein is the executive director of One World Education, based in Washington. He says the nonprofit group has worked with over 1,500 student writers. He says 350 teachers use the One World curriculum. He says the essays can serve as a writing and learning guide for thousands of students. Mr. Goldstein is a former classroom teacher himself. He and another teacher began forming plans for One World Education in 2006. The group publishes a study unit each month from August through May. Each unit of the curriculum starts with an essay called a One World Reflection. The subjects have ranged from single parenthood to protecting rainforests to exploring Arab cultures, says Mr. Goldstein. Layla Kunesh of Washington wrote about her feeling that media reports in the United States are often unfair to Muslims. A learning activity based on her reflection called for students to collect examples of media stories and discuss whether or not that was true. Layla was chosen as a One World Student Ambassador last year. 12 students are chosen yearly. Their reflections are published on the group's website with learning activities and reading and writing aids. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Students at St. Louis University have launched weather balloons into the sky above the city of St. Louis, Missouri. The United States Space Agency, NASA, is paying for the project to measure ozone gas. It is part of a study to learn more about air pollution and our climate. The students are getting the opportunity to carry out a real scientific experiment. They used a laptop computer and a radio receiver outside the St. Louis Science Center to communicate with data gathering devices on the balloon. Before launch, the students tested all the instruments and attached them to the weather balloon filled with helium. Gary Morris is a professor at Valparaiso University in Indiana. He is the lead trainer for the nationwide study. The professor says NASA wants more information on ozone because of how it affects our atmosphere. High above the Earth, in the stratosphere, the ozone layer keeps harmful ultraviolet radiation from reaching the ground. But in the lower atmosphere, emissions from cars and other sources like petrochemical plants form ozone pollution and smog. They cause unhealthy air conditions that affect breathing. Jack Fishman leads the ozone study at St. Louis University. He says new requirements that decrease pollution have lowered ozone levels in American cities. But he notes that pollution in remote areas continues to increase. He blames industrial activity in East Asia for that pollution. Jack Fishman says polluted air is being blown across the Pacific by air currents in the upper atmosphere. He says ozone pollution has slowed the growth of farm crops and forests. For VOA Learning English, I'm Laurel Bowman.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Some people think of politics as a game, but an online game lets people think of themselves doing one of the hardest jobs in American politics, cutting the federal budget. The game is called Budget Hero. Students in Los Angeles and other cities have been playing it. Budget Hero lets them decide how they want to spend federal tax dollars. The game uses information from the Congressional Budget Office. It shows what effects each cost-cutting proposal would have. High school student Dory Bennett says she thinks spending cuts are needed to keep the economy growing and keep the American dream alive. I want to grow up, go to college, get a good job, have kids maybe, a dog, and a house. The students consider the same issues facing lawmakers in Washington. The game was developed in 2008. In the newest version, students make decisions about what spending is important to them. Do they want to reduce taxes? Spend more on environmental protection? What about defense spending? Making these decisions helps clarify their goals. Jane Harmon is a former Democratic representative from California. She served in Congress for almost 20 years. She now heads the Woodrow Wilson Center for International Scholars, which helped create Budget Hero. Ms. Harmon says the students are having more success than Congress at cutting the budget. More than 1 million people have played it so far, she says, and she thinks they have learned at least 2 things. 1, how hard it is, but 2, that it can be done if there's a will to do it. Student Jeffrey Burke agrees. The hardest thing for us to figure out was the little cuts, like the gas money and stuff, increasing taxes on gas, because we felt it would have effects everywhere, from the truck drivers shipping our stuff across the country, or when you order from Amazon or whatever, to your drive when you're going to work. I think we need to look at the little things and realize that just because they're small money doesn't mean they're small effects. Joaquin Alvarado is with American Public Media, an organization that also helped create the game. He says many of the players will literally, in the comments, ask that Congress play this game to just get a little rational around the questions that have to be answered. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can find a video of students playing Budget Hero at voa.org/video. specialenglish.com.